Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever. 2 is better than none. Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube. Come to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening, 6:30 Central Time. No Dominic Guanzon today. It is disappointing, but the one plus is we won't have a Zoom-sponsored intermission, but we'd still rather have Dom and still have said Zoom-sponsored intermission. That much I don't even think needs to be stated. So it's kind of a throwback show, at least to when Joe and I used to do this thing. But somebody's got to run this ship because it sure ain't me. I don't know what the hell I do, and that's why I pay these people handsomely to do it, like Joe knows. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing good. Yeah, Dom, he had to take 420 off. Convenience? What you trying to say, Dom? Like coincidence here or something? No, I'm kidding. No, other than that, I've been doing good. I just picked out my classes for summer and fall for my master's program.
Here.
And I have a ton of homework to do this weekend because I was pushing it back day by day, and I'm realizing that it's going to bite me in the ass if I don't do it sooner than later. And with the weather, with the way the weather is, hey, there's no other place. There's not another place I would be than inside my textbook, reading it paragraph by paragraph.
I was having a conversation with somebody at work today, and he's lived all over the country and stuff. And we were talking, and I told him, I said that's the one thing about the Midwest, and I think it's kind of the same on the East Coast. I said I'm not trying to say that like people in Miami or Tampa or like, San Diego, LA are lazy, but I will say though, if it's 4:00 on a Friday, or like let's say even 2:00 on a Friday, and it's rainy and crappy out here, versus like aqua water sunshine in Tampa Bay, who's staying at the office later? You know what I mean? I said that's the one thing about this weather is it does incentivize better to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Especially on a day like today. It's been raining pretty much all day out here. It's been crappy. We were just talking. It's been crappy ever since I moved pretty much. We had that one day that it was 70. It was the only day. It was a Monday. And I think it's going to be near 70 tomorrow, so I'm not complaining about that.
Apparently this weekend is supposed to be better. I only know this because my work had me make a bunch of social media posts about people coming to visit our skate park and mini golf course and all this other stuff. So I was
it's going to be near 80 on Saturday.
Well, there we go.
80.
That's why.
Yeah, at least out here. I don't know about inland, but like, closer to the lake. But like, it's supposed to be like 78 out here. So it's going to be warm. Thank God, and I'm not even a heat person, but I'm just sick of these like 20, 30 degree temperatures.
I'm getting tired, of leaving my house in the morning in my leather jacket or winter jacket, and then like near the end of the day, it's like I didn't need to bring this with me, but it was cold as shit in the morning.
Oh, dude, same here, man. Leaving the house at 5:30, like, and it's like the coldest it's gonna be all day.
Yeah.
It sucks, man. And it makes waking up that, like, ever since I started doing morning radio, I've learned, like, it's the hardest to wake up in January and February. It's not so bad in the summertime, but it's the hardest in those months when it's dark, it's 10 degrees. That's the hardest time to wake up, I think, for anybody. But when you work at the graveyard like I do, like, that's the hardest time to get out of bed.
Yep.
But we will move forward, though, because we got 2 big topics today. We're going to touch on, there's 2 big changes coming to Netflix, and we'll address that in the latter half of the show. There's 2 big changes coming to Netflix. They've been rumoring the first one for a while, but the second one is kind of like a compounding factor to the first one. Netflix, in so many words, is cracking down on password sharing, and they're implementing a new structure because obviously what's going to happen is if they do a full sweeping ban on these password sharings or block that's going to lose a lot of viewers. That's going to lose a ton of viewers, and they're implementing a lower cost, effective model to sort of entice people to actually get their own subscription.
Wow, Netflix is going to lower their price? That's crazy.
Not in the way you think. Not the way you think. Joe did not have time to read the article. I will call you out. I will touch on that. I will contextualize it and everything. It's not uber complicated, but we'll save that. we'll save that for towards the end. In the meantime, we should have talked about this last week, but thank the theaters out here for not showing it. And I finally did get to see it this weekend, and it was worth the wait, I will say. It's Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you've been on Twitter or you've been on social media, you've probably seen this, or at least one of your nerd friends talking about it, like me. But Everything Everywhere All at Once, the new film by the Daniels, Dan Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. This is their new movie. While in between movies, too, I must say. It took a while in between. I think Daniel Schneider made I always struggle with his name. I think he did make his own movie, like he separate from the Daniels brand that they use. I think
he made The Death of Dick Long is what it was.
Yeah, I still like that title. I never saw it, but I like the title. Swiss Army Man was the last movie they did together, the last feature movie, and that was kind of a sleeper hit.
Yeah,
that was with Paul Dano and
Daniel
Radcliffe. Daniel Radcliffe was in it as a farting corpse, and I'll always remember that movie. I was not huge on that thing, but I'll always remember that movie as like the first 10, 20 minutes of that thing. I thought I was watching one of the worst movies of the year. I really did. I thought it was one of the worst movies of the year I was walking into, but then it got better. It got significantly better. I struggle to think of another movie that rebounded quite like that one after what was a really bad start. That movie's interesting. I don't think it's great, but I think it's interesting no less. Mm-hmm. But Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I'm going to start the review off by saying that it is very good. It is very good. It's now I think the highest rated movie on Letterboxd, and it took no time to get there. Mm-hmm. And here's how I'm going to start this, because I kept thinking about this movie. I did not expect to think about this movie while watching this movie. But the plot is it's kind of difficult to explain, but in so many words, Michelle Yeoh plays Evelyn Wang. She's a stressed out owner of a laundromat who's undergoing an audit, a business audit by an IRS agent played by Jamie Lee Curtis. And essentially she winds up, just as she's in the meeting with the auditor, she winds up getting sucked into the multiverse, or at least winds up seeing an alternate reality version of her husband, and who kind of informs her that there are these multiple different realities where Evelyn's living several different lives. And on top of all this too, she's close to getting a divorce with her husband. Her daughter's alienated on top of just by her mother, but also she has a girlfriend, which isn't going to sit well with her grandfather, Evelyn's father. Yeah. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of chaos in this movie, to say the least. But you know what it reminded me of? This is the year, I think, where mothers and daughters have a reconciliation period between the two of them, because we saw that earlier this year. And when I say earlier this year, I mean last month, quite literally. You saw that in Turning Red. That's one of the focal points of Pixar's new movie, Turning Red. And this movie is like that reconciliation, but from the mother's perspective versus the daughter's perspective, which is what Turning Red is about. There's so much more to dive into this movie, and I think that by the end of this, Joe and I are just going to scratch the surface, but that's the immediate thing that jumped out to me with this movie, was that, like, it's another story, and we don't get these a lot, so it's not even remotely a played out trope, but it's another story of like what it comes down to. A mother-daughter reconciliation, and also a woman coming to grips of trying to appreciate life in a way and in the moments, which sounds a lot more broad than I think this movie is. What say you, though, Joe?
I completely agree with everything you just said. This movie, it is like, I'm going to say this right now, let me get this out of the way, because I had a few people who haven't seen the movie yet that I know they probably actually won't like something like this. This movie is made, it's really catered to, the best way to put it is a film hipster. People who love to see just weird stuff for the sake of the art. And are Steve and I like that? In some ways, yes. We do like to see something original. We do like to see something that we don't really see often in theaters. And Everything Everywhere All at Once is that, but it's also that to a fault at times, and I'll get into that later. This is a ton of fun, though. I still think, even if you're not like a big film hipster, that I'm not saying go out and see it, but if you see it on Netflix, whatever it may be, maybe even for a matinee show, if you're not a big film buff like we are, this actually might be a really fun time for you. So as long you just go along for the ride. Don't try to follow the plot. Don't try to dissect everything. Just go for the ride, because visually, to me, this movie is one of the best visual movies I've seen in a long time. It is so cool to look at points, and just what they do with the visuals from time to time, and how they show the multiverse, and like how it's like, it interacts with this and everything. It's like, this is the stuff I love. Of course, I know A24 isn't behind the movie. They're the ones that distributed it, but this is the stuff we love seeing distributed by them. It's also the stuff, and again, I'll get to this later, that I kind of roll my eyes at from time to time distributed by them, because I'm like, you know what, man, this is sometimes the typical A24 movie that I kind of make fun of A24 for making at points. But this is definitely on the better end of things. And to me, it's mainly due to two things. One is, again, the visuals. I think the action is shot really fun. It's great. It's wacky. It's cartoony. At times, it's a bit too cartoony, but for the most part, it works. But two, and this is the main reason why I absolutely actually had a great time watching this, Michelle Yeoh's performance to me is the glue that holds this movie together. Everybody else in this movie's great, but to me, this is her show, and she nails it. This is my favorite performance of Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah, and I mean it's early in a way, but I see this movie holding a lot of momentum throughout the year.
I hope so.
I think Oscar consideration for this thing is serious. I think it's that good.
Yeah.
I think it's that good, at least in a visual aspect. And Michelle Yeoh, I think Michelle Yeoh, I think if nobody else is probably, this is an early candidate for one of the best performances of the year.
Yeah.
Because it's such a difficult performance too. And I saw a really good interview with her not too long ago, which actually had her tearing up and getting emotional about it, because she said that she hasn't gotten like very deep and layered roles. This is easily the most like dense role she's ever played, and she's wanted that challenge for years.
She is either two things in a movie. She's either the kung fu lady partner sidekick to James Bond or Jackie Chan, or she's the mean old Asian lady like she was in Crazy Rich Asians. And she was great in that movie. In that movie, like, let's give credit where credit is due. Yes, Crazy Rich Asians did break down like some barriers, showing like, people of color in the Asian community can make a movie that makes a ton of money. But Michelle Yeoh has been overdue for a performance like this. When you look at her, the other female, not lead, but character in this movie, which is Jamie Lee Curtis, who throughout her whole career has had roles like this. And even recently, they've re-examined the whole Laurie Strode thing. But I want to give shout outs to the other performances that also did a great job at keeping me interested in the movie. Just kept me involved at points to where this movie was getting a little bit ridiculous for me with its visuals, and I was just kind of like getting lost with the story. But man, it has been so long, and I'm so glad to see him again. But I might butcher his name here. Hugh Kwan, man. Little short round from Indiana Jones is all grown up, and he was fantastic in this movie.
And he came back, man. Like I forgot. I mean, it makes sense. I forgot that he like retired or like removed himself from acting. He was also Data in the Goonies.
Yep, I was gonna say he's Data in the Goonies as well.
Yeah, it was so cool seeing him. Stephanie Sue as well. She's in it. This is kind of like her breakout role of the core four of this movie. It's really her breakout role, so to speak. All these actors are good.
Even the grandfather, who, I mean, if you've seen any like 90s cartoon, you've recognized this voice. James Hong, he has the most iconic voice. Big Trouble in Little China is where I saw him first as the Emperor. Mm-hmm. It is such a great collection of actors who can really just take a role and make it their own, especially for the newcomer, like you said. Stephanie who just fits in perfectly here as the daughter, Joy Wang.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in here too. And you know what the funny thing about Stephanie Sue, actually? Stephanie Sue, she played on Broadway. She was in the SpongeBob musical as Plankton's wife.
Oh, Karen. No way.
I just saw that. I just saw that. That's pretty sweet. But and this is where too, like, to give you an idea, if you don't know what this movie is or you've just been hearing things about it, this is there's going to be a little bit of a divide, I think, because I like how Joe billed it as film hipsters, which we kind of are in some sort of degree, but there's also the old joke that says A20, the reason the studio A24 is called A24 is that they're the only movies that exist to a 24-year-old. But moreover though,
and I'm gonna say this right now, ever since I turned 25 and now 26, there's been a few more of these I've been like, these are starting to get annoying to me.
For sure, no. But they still know how to pick them. They truly do. But like going into it though, the one thing that might alienate some people or going to go over some people's heads because some of it did me initially, but like if you know these actors, you're going to enjoy it even more. Like Michelle Yeoh too. The Daniels are nuanced in including like callbacks to her early career in Hong Kong action movies, which I'm truthfully, Hong Kong cinema is not a cinema I am super familiar with too. I'm just getting that out there. That's not a facet of cinema. I almost feel like you kind of have to be all in or all out with those movies. And I'm not in that sort of sphere. That's never been my wheelhouse. But Michelle Yeoh, obviously famous for her career in these Hong Kong action movies. There's a lot of callbacks. They're subtle. They're not over the top, but there's a lot of subtle callbacks to her sort of work in that. And then for as far as Quan goes, he does have some little callbacks as well to his former roles, but they do not like. The Daniels are careful here. Yeah. They're not making this an Easter egg hunt. They're careful here where it's like, if you know, and you're a film fan and you recognize these actors and you know their filmography, then you're going to get it.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're not going to feel excluded because the movie doesn't make its central focus. And that's hard to do, especially when it comes to like people who love movies like Shiner and Quan clearly do. It's hard not to like shine the spotlight on it and be like, look how clever we are. But they're confident enough that like the real ones who will get this will get it. They don't need all the attention on it.
And they do it smartly too. Like, I don't want to ruin too many of the universes that you see in this movie, but there's literally just a universe. It's just Michelle Yeoh. It's just like literally her life. But what they do with that universe, it's a very emotional moment in the movie. It involves her and her husband in like, you know, a what if scenario, the one who walked away scenario, and like the way it's handled and the conversation they had, I was like, damn, that was really good. I don't want to get into critiques too early. You know what? Actually, Steve, keep going. We'll get into my critiques later. I don't want to get into it too early.
Sure. I also think that a less compelling movie, a movie that would have just been interested in universe hopping, which this movie clearly is. Yeah. There's a lot of games being
played.
Space
Jam: A New Odyssey, or whatever it was called.
Easy. It ain't like that. This is like an actual. This is not a server verse.
No. I'm saying like that's the movie that's interested in being like, hey, let's keep moving the jump to new universes like every 20 seconds.
I picked up what you put down there, but. Yeah. The thing is, a lesser movie would not have been focused on the human interest elements of these characters. Yes. And that's where this movie, I think, really is a cut above. Because it's through Evelyn's ability to gain strength and empathy during her dimensional trips that the purpose for this experience is to, like, better understand the lives of others, where she has been way too consumed with her own perceived misgivings and failings that she's forgotten to realize. And we do this as humans sometimes. I've done it. I do it. You think everybody else in your life is the supporting character and you are the lead actor over here. We're all guilty of it in some ways. I know I certainly am. You think your problems are more interesting than anybody else's, or your problems carry on a greater weight, but it's like everybody's, especially this day and age, everybody's fucking struggling. You know what I mean? Yeah. In some way, shape, or form. Everybody's trying to get their head above water. And that's where this movie, I think, shines, is like, through all the chaos, through all the sort of universe hopping, as I was calling it, there's actually a term for it. There's a term for it in this movie that's sort of verse jumping, excuse me. Through all of that, though, the other remarkable thing about this movie is that it's able to come back and find its emotional core and remind you that this isn't a sound and light show. I can't believe it, but honestly, I mean, this wouldn't be my favorite film of the year, but it's probably top three. I can think of like three. I'm not going to go into the other two, but like three of my favorite scenes so far of the year, one of which is in this movie. And everybody's going to think I'm friggin' nuts, but if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. One of the most moving, most significant scenes I think I've seen in movies all year involves two boulders communicating via on-screen text. Love that scene. That was a lean forward scene for me.
I was in a theater by myself when I saw this movie. And
lucky you.
Yeah, I went to the Glen Art Theater, and I've never. Okay, just real quick.
Oh wow, okay, that's supposed to be a nice one.
It is. It is very dark, though. I had to go down a long, dark hallway, and as soon as I got into the theater, I was a minute late, and they were playing the Northman trailer, and so the theater was pitch black because that movie is shot, like, in the dark and everything, and I just could not find my seat, and I was like, screw it, I'm in this theater by myself. No one's buying a ticket to come see this at 4 o'clock on a Monday, so I just sat down wherever. But yeah, no, when that scene came on, that is definitely, I think, one of the strongest scenes of, like, emotions in a while, and yeah, it involves two boulders talking to each other. I won't ruin how they talk to each other or why they are, but it's great, man. I was just sitting like, wow, that was... I think what made it work so well, too, is that this movie has a lot going on. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of information they're throwing at you, rules that sometimes they don't even follow. That when you get this just 2-minute scene of just quietness, it actually really hit. It was like, between all this noise... oh my god, here is a scene that I can actually just take in, relax, and really pay attention to what's being talked about here.
And it wasn't a wink and a nudge moment of silence, like, hey, you need this. There's a lot going on. Yeah. Like, no, it had something to say.
It did.
Like, it was impacting. And I love that scene. And it's weird, like I said, if you try to explain it to somebody who hasn't seen this thing or hasn't even heard of it, it doesn't land.
No,
but in the middle of this thing, when it comes and what is said in between that scene and sort of the significance they overlay onto that particular universe, like, it's only about a 2.5 minute. I don't think it's a 3-minute scene. It's not long, but it's very moving.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to be nuts because there's so much really, for lack of a better term, very cool, visuals in this thing. I thought I was nuts until I talked to my best friend who saw it. My best friend said, "You know what? That was my favorite scene too."
Yeah.
He goes, I was thinking about that scene more than anyone else after seeing the movie.
I think they do a great job at introducing that scene very humorlessly, and then when they actually keep going with it, it's one of the scenes they cut to, because there's other two universes they cut to for like a sight gag that they try doing an emotional thing with it. And just for me, it didn't work as strongly as this one did, which involves a universe where you have hot dogs for fingers. And I just thought that one kind of like overstayed its welcome. And another one that involves two chefs that I won't ruin the surprise there because I did get a big laugh out of it.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, this movie's not flawless, yeah. and now it's kind of like, and you're newish to Letterboxd too, so you're gonna realize that this is one of those movies that, like, I've tried not to go down the rabbit hole too deeply because I think we're at the point right now where the circle jerk is, for lack of a better term, is getting a little bit overboard.
Yeah.
With this thing in some ways.
I've seen 5 out of 5 reviews where it's just like, dude, I don't even feel like you really meant this. Like, you're just giving it a 5 out of 5 to join the camp.
That's what I'm saying. Like, but I mean, all that aside though, is like,
it's not to take away, yeah. It's not to take away how great
this movie's not flawless, and its flaws are not ones to get hung up on. But to your point, I feel like there is one universe where everybody's got sausage fingers, and people learn to do things that they would normally do with their fingers with their feet. They cut to that about 5 times too many.
Yeah,
and the thing about it too is that, like, my audience, this was strange. I saw this on a Sunday morning with there was about, maybe I want to say 10 people, including me. It's about 10 people or so. It wasn't like Father Stew. I went to go see Father Stew. There's 40 people in here. Can you tell I live in a Catholic area? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But like, seeing this movie, my audience.
I was gonna say, they see the poster to this, they probably think it's like some Buddhism movie or something.
Honestly, yeah. If they gave out Oscars for best poster, this would be in the running. But the thing too is that I was like, kind of like, watching, because like whenever I see a movie, especially a movie like this weird, I'm looking forward to The Northman for the same reason, or even Unbearable Weight.
Yeah.
Is that, like, I like to kind of watch the audience too while I'm watching the movie. I like to that's why I sit. That's one of the reasons I sit so far back. But like, I was watching the audience, and like, there wasn't a lot of. I was surprised there wasn't a lot of engagement with the audience with this thing. I don't know if my audience was just squares. I don't know, but like, I also, too, I will say this, and there's no way to say this without sounding a little bit pretentious. I didn't find a ton of the comedy to be that funny.
Yeah.
In this movie. I didn't think the comedy landed a lot. But it didn't land with a thud. It wasn't like a bad joke when you're just wincing. It just was like a nod, like an acknowledgement. I didn't find the comedy as strong as I was led to believe going into this thing.
It's and I've heard this term used. It's the festival, like film festival humor, where it's you get everybody all riled up that when they see something on screen they'll go like like that's just look what they're doing. They're doing this in a movie. That's hilarious. Like and
it's the festival darling.
Yeah. And there are, to me, the best jokes in this movie is when it's just Michelle Yeoh and her husband just interacting. And it's Michelle Yeoh just reacting like, what the hell is going on? That's where I got like my biggest laughs out of. I did say there was one sight gag that I did laugh at that involves two chefs. But even then, that starts to overstay its welcome. And then the boulder thing, the way that's introduced, I think was very funny. I actually got a good chuckle out of it. And it helped reel me back in. And again, I mean, as much as like, you know, my biggest complaint with this movie is like, yeah, I do think the humor is a bit all over the place where it becomes a little bit too cartoony for its own good. It does manage to reel me back in because of its characters.
100%. This thing never lost me. And it's funny because you think about it, like just for a couple of our criticisms, these criticisms I think would break another movie.
Yeah.
But with this movie though, it's so bold. And also another thing, we haven't mentioned this yet. It's very optimistic for a movie like this. Just when it starts to go down this path, when it introduces the everything bagel, which is one of the big sort of metaphors of the movie. It's basically a metaphor for it's a black hole type thing, but it's a metaphor for nihilism in so many ways, which is kind of like the hip, cool thing. I think Rick and Morty kind of popularized that a little bit.
Actually, Rick and Morty is what was like popping my head throughout this movie. Like, if you love the interdimensional cable bits, you'll probably love like the parts they do in this movie.
I don't call out Rick and Morty. I honestly haven't seen enough of it to really form a cogent opinion. But like the reason I bring it up is because I feel like the time when Rick and Morty started really peaking in popularity was also sort of the time people were like, life sucks, dude. No, nothing matters. You know what I mean? And that started to become like the hip, trendy thing, you know, the nihilistic, nothing matters attitude. And this movie, like, if you're not paying attention, you could mistake it for that. But the movie is very anti-nihilist. And that's another thing about this that I really like, is that the movie sort of comes back in the last 20 minutes to like reject that whole idea. And how I sort of described it in my review is I said, I think the main takeaway for me is that like if losing ourselves by focusing on our own flaws and shortcomings compounds such things as nihilism or like generational trauma, then maybe there's a compassionate approach is like the way to go. Some outward appreciation for others and the acceptance of who they are might be the only way to cut through the chaos. And even if for nothing but a fleeting moment, appreciate like the constant treadmill of life that we're on. And I think that that's an important thing with this movie is that it, through all the chaos and the color vomit and a lot of like the kaleidoscopic visuals, for lack of a better term, it leaves you with ideas to take away, or at least little elements or lines of dialogue or moments that it leaves you to take away. And I think that coupled with the human interest is what makes this movie a cut above.
I agree. No, you basically nailed that. I'm good to give final thoughts if you want.
Sure. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I waned to touch on.
There is. It's just, you know, again, I don't want to ruin too much for people who are actually intrigued for this movie.
Issue. That's the other issue. We didn't talk much about her. I mean, you could tell she's having a lot of fun. Jamie Lee Curtis is very
good. Yeah, no, I got them, man. Jamie Lee Curtis is so happy she gets to do a role like this where she doesn't have to worry about Michael Myers chasing her or anything, man. Like, she just comes in and just, I'm having a blast with this one. Like, her action scene she does with Michelle Yeoh, man, had me cracking up. Like, the look of just being, like, an IRS agent. It's like she nailed that perfectly. Like, yeah, I'm here to help you with your taxes. Yes.
And it kind of goes back to, like, it's funny. Like, now that I think of it, this totally just popped in my head this instant. Because the whole thing, you know, she gets sucked into this universe, you know, or like she gets sucked into this verse jumping shenanigan thing when she's going for her business audit to do her taxes and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just thought about it. I'm like, that's not a coincidence. I'm thinking about it like, What do they always say? The only two guarantees in life are death and taxes. That can't be a coincidence, you know, because much of the movie, I don't think we mentioned this, much of the movie is set in an IRS office.
As much as we are saying, like, there's universe jumping and everything, no. Most of this movie does take place in an IRS building, and that might sound boring to you. No, they make it visually cool. Like, they do a great job. And the action scenes make it fun and keep the story moving along.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll just really touch on quickly here is just like, I mean, flowers all around for a lot of different people here. Jason Kisvarde, the production designer here, works his ass off to make like an assembly of cubicles and like window front offices make really interesting. And I don't want to give away, but like there are some office supplies, including a particular award, which I don't want to get into, but they're like that like anything's fair game in this battle. And I think that's a lot of fun, and that's a big credit to the production design team here, as well as editor Paul Rogers, who has like the toughest task, I think, of trying to keep the damn wheels on this movie.
Oh man, no, I agree with you. Like, they did a great job with production, sets, everything, editing in this as well. Very well done. I just remembered the one where it's like, because the rules, I'll leave that to you guys to find out as a viewer, to see like, you know, where you determine the rules are, because, you know, I'll say this. The way they explain the rules in this movie, it does make sense, and it leaves it open enough to interpretation of how things can work. And like sometimes it, like, you know, as the movie's going along, it feels like it's betraying that rule set. But I'm having a lot of fun watching the movie still, compared to something like Tenet, which is explaining the rules throughout that whole damn movie. But I don't understand a damn thing that's going on, nor do I care about the story. That's like the biggest difference here.
That movie didn't even pop. That movie rarely pops into my mind, but that movie didn't even pop into my mind watching this. But that is so true. It's like, you want to talk about a movie that's actually enjoyable, if complex, and kind of like, at least in the beginning part of it, distills the rules down to like 3 solid points about verse jumping and who am I and why are you doing this? It at least gets the who, what, where, when, and why out of the way. So like, you're not questioning everything, and it's also not deliberately trying to be opaque.
Yeah.
Which is a big credit to this. If you want to jump into ratings though, that's fine. I've really said pretty much all major points on this thing. And it's just great too that like, I think that we have these young, ambitious filmmakers that are really
absolutely
going against the grain and tired of a lot of the same stories. And the Daniels too, I don't know, like their path forward to me is interesting, because you can't, granted they've only really made 2 movies together on top of a handful of shorts, but like, you can't easily pigeonhole what the hell they're going to do next. And I love directors like that. It's part of the reason I've been gassing them up, and we'll find out in, I think, exactly 2 months if I was right, according to you and Dom, about Cha-Cha Real Smooth. It's one of the reasons I gas up Cooper Raiff so much, because Cooper Raiff he's made 2 very different dramas, and then his third movie is going to focus on a hockey scandal. I love directors that you cannot easily pigeonhole.
Yeah.
And these guys too are defiant in that. They really resist that. So this is 3.5 out of 4 stars for me. I don't know if I'm as in love with it as a lot of like colleagues and other people that have really gotten into this. But I will say this though, I have read, amidst a lot of praise for this movie, I have read a lot of personal testaments. I even this one woman I follow on Letterboxd talked about how seeing this movie with her mother was like an unexpected sort of like occurrence, or at least an unexpected experience. So I mean, I do think that this movie, especially Stephanie Sue's character, we didn't touch on her a ton. I think she too, her character, has a lot of room to resonate, because again, I hate to keep comparing it to Turning Red, but it touches on those elements of generational trauma.
It is Turning Red in the sense that you do have a similar theme here, but you are getting it from a different point of view. You're getting it from the parental point of view now.
Yes.
Compared to the daughter's point of view and how they're seeing their mother. It's the mother who has the blinders on in this movie and needs to learn to put them down and actually see what's going around her.
They could have won either way by either releasing this thing. I mean, you wouldn't have wanted to go up against Doctor Strange 2 next month. But
God, no.
but you wouldn't have wanted that. But I would have said they could have won. Like, they released this movie like ahead of tax day. I don't know if that was a point of cognizance there. But like, they could have probably won 2 releasing this around Mother's Day, at least for the symbology of it.
Yeah.
What say you, though? It's 3.5 stars for me. I thoroughly enjoyed this thing, and I'm so grateful I got to see it in the theater.
I had a blast watching this movie. I mean, both you and I have shared that, like, to a point that we want to make so clear, because as much as we are having criticisms, because we want to make it clear to the people who are circle jerking this movie, that we did enjoy it, that it is a great film, and that it is something refreshing that I do love seeing, especially from, of course, yes, A24. I love seeing, it has elements that I hate seeing from A24, like, I saw Lamb now, and I'm just kind of like, whatever about that movie.
Lamb is not that good.
Yeah, still haven't seen The Green Knight. Still waiting on that one. But, like, again, this is more on the side of, hey, this is what I like to see from A24. Yeah, it's weird. It's it's unique. It's doing its own thing. But it is still entertaining at the end of the day, compared to something like Lamb, which is, it's weird, unique. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of like, I feel like I just watched a bunch of nothing lead up to nothing. What was I going to say? This movie is, I think anybody can have fun with it, with the right mindset going into it, just for the ride, or if you're a film nerd, buff, whatever you want to call it, you're gonna love this thing. You really are. This is also a 3.5 out of 4-star movie for me as well. I had a blast watching it. Michelle Yeoh, I hope you get nominated for an Oscar. Hell, I mean, I know it's so early on in the year, but I mean, if you win it, I'd be so happy for you with how good this performance was. Like, this, I mean, you had to, like, change the way you are as a person several times in this movie. It's not an easy feat to do. And just the way she played, just even the normal Evelyn, like, I thought she just nailed that so perfectly. Yeah, 3.5 out of 4 stars.
It's funny that you mentioned Lamb, too. I was not very high on Lamb either.
I remember a lot of people were also circle jerking that one. They're like, oh, but the last 20 minutes. And then I saw the last 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, so what?
The problem with Lamb, and I don't want to go too deep in here, but like the problem with Lamb is that, like, by the time it gets to that last 20 minutes, the movie hasn't given you a reason to care.
Exactly.
The movie hasn't given you characters on which to latch. I don't think it's made its themes abundantly clear. Like, here's the thing. I appreciated Lamb a little bit more when I read about it, and like the idea of motherhood and trauma in that regard. But the movie that's another movie that's so opaque that it does everything to alienate you, that by the time it gets to that point, the last 20 minutes, which, let's be honest, are shocking.
Yeah.
Are shocking. That's not something I'm soon going to forget, but it's like, you're not even that motivated really to, like, find out more about it, because, like, it takes so damn long. I said with Lamb, and now that you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about, because I said it in my original review, which you can read at stevepulaski.com. You want to know what Lamb needed? Lamb needed more moments like that dance scene. It needed some more moments. You think I'm nuts, but it needed more moments to, like, cut through the gloom and the silence. And that's the only thing, I'm just going to say this right now, that's the only thing that worries me about The Northman, because Schoen, the writer, he's a poet, I believe.
Yeah.
Schoen, the writer of Lamb, co-wrote The Northman.
Oh.
So I'm a little nervous about that. I admire, because you know what? Lamb reminded me of classic poetry. Flowery language, beautifully written stanzas, no idea what the hell it's supposed to be.
If to reassure you, the early reviews I have seen of The Northman have said this is like adult fantasy fairy tale at its best. Like, it has, like, those elements of it visually and themes of it in its writing that, like, reminds them of, like, in the 70s when we had more adult fantasy, even, like, adult fairy tale-esque movies.
I'm all for it. I'm sold on it. I mean,
I'm seeing it tomorrow night. I can't wait.
Robert Eggers, like, I love The Lighthouse. I like that significantly more than The Witch. But
same.
And I'll tell you, I'm not a big, like, period drama, period piece guy, but at the same time, though, I really, I love The Green Knight was on my top 10 of the year. So, like,
true, yeah, it was.
So I'm sold on it. Real quick, just before we segue to the Netflix story, real quick, this is just a question for you. When you saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, I know there's, when they're speaking Chinese, there are captions, there's subtitles. Was it captioned throughout your entire show, like even English subtitles?
No.
I don't know why the hell mine was.
And it sucked because I went to the
maybe somebody was hard of hearing in the theater. I don't know.
Maybe.
I didn't mind it. I actually watch all movies with subtitles at home.
Same here.
I didn't mind it, but I've been asking people, and yeah, I think because there were subtitles throughout the whole movie. The only time they weren't on screen is if there was already existing English subtitles on screen.
I wish I had subtitles though the whole way through, because the Glenart Theater, it's a cool like monument to go see if you live in the area. But damn, does this sound system suck for when people are talking quietly?
Does it really?
Yeah.
I haven't been there. I have one of my best friends. He goes there a lot, or he did go there.
I can hear Sonic 2 down like 2 theater screens compared to my own movie more.
God, that's like back when I was in Peru, and there was that Peru theater before they remodeled it. Oh God, the sound bleed was wretched. But we'll move forward, though. We're not going to take too long on this topic. I did want to bring this up, though, because this is something like anytime, like we have there's a ton of streaming services out there, but I feel like anytime something affects Netflix, it affects all of us.
Absolutely.
Like I feel like that Netflix at this point is so damn ubiquitous and everybody seems to have it. Yeah. Like I start to laugh now. These I think it's like the last quarter, the last 2 quarters, Netflix has experienced a dip in subscribers. It's like, how much of the market do you already have?
That's the thing.
These CEOs, they freak out, but it's like like McDonald's even too, or like Microsoft. It's like you're not a monopoly, but you are the biggest fish in a crowded pond.
Yeah.
Like, if you're plummeting over the course of years, that's one thing. But Netflix is not going to be the next Kmart anytime soon.
Netflix is the most iconic out of these. It's the base one that a lot of people usually start with when it comes to streaming services. Yeah, of course, yeah, now there's like other competition, and when you look at the Netflix catalog and the crap they put out like every week, that like you're just like, well, what the hell's the point of me holding a subscription for this long if you're going to turn out content like this? I'll just wait until you have your big Thanksgiving and Christmas Day movie and Stranger Things. That's literally what my friend said. Like, I'm quoting him right there and then.
This is a lot of confirmation bias too, but I always go back to the point, like when I'm talking about a movie, to like a coworker. One of the first questions, is it on Netflix?
Yeah.
Like, it's the de facto streaming service in that regard.
They don't look at me and say, is it on HBO Max?
Is it on Apple TV? Like, nobody says that shit. But anyway, this is a story though, and this has been coming for a little bit because they trial ran this whole system in I want to say Costa Rica, but Netflix estimates, this is a CNBC article if you want to flash it, Joe. Netflix estimates 100 million households are sharing passwords, and they're suggesting that this sort of system that they have in place, I believe it's in Chile and it's in Costa Rica as a couple places, but they're suggesting that a global crackdown is coming. But this is an interesting thing because it's been a common thing with streaming services. People share passwords. You know what I mean? I've traded for streaming services.
Don't go on the Sleepless Google Docs.
Yeah, no kidding, right? But, this show ain't free. You know what I mean? We have to have our content some way. No, but I've traded people for logins and stuff like that. Like I always say, I'm like Donald Trump. We're gonna make great trades. But this has been coming for a while. This isn't really a shock if you've been paying attention. Some people are curious as to how they're going to do this, and they haven't really said yet. But if it's anything like how they've trialed it in Costa Rica, how they do it though is that your login only works at your home base, like you have a home device or something like that. I don't know how it's connected to your IP, but it's like your home device. In order for the login to work off-site, to work at like on my TV, and I'm in a different state, so to speak, you have to pay an additional. A college kid, you have to pay an additional monthly fee. Like in Costa Rica, I think it's $3. I don't know how their conversion rate works though, but in Costa Rica, it's an extra $3. And given America, it's probably going to be more money. So I that is going to be how that they're going to be looking to do it.
Well,
and Joe's over here like, oh Jesus Christ, I gotta see if my plug pays that extra $3.
Emma, John, everybody else, Nick, I'm sorry. That's for you. I ain't paying that extra money. I already paying to let 4 screens be used at once. I ain't paying that extra. Oh, Mom, sorry.
I am currently in conversation with my plug, but anyway, no, that's going to be sort of the stipulation here though, is And there's a good quote from Netflix. It says, our relatively high household penetration, nooch, when including the large number of household sharing accounts, combined with competition, is creating revenue growth headwinds. Account sharing as a percentage of our paying membership hasn't changed much over the years, but coupled with the first factor means it's harder to grow membership in many markets, an issue that was obscured by our COVID growth because a lot of people couldn't leave the house and theaters weren't a big factor.
Yeah.
So that's the difficulty now, though. But here's my first thought, and they did kind of address this, is that, okay, here's what's going to happen. You're not going to lose. So like if you're sharing your Netflix account with somebody, they're not getting revenue from you. They're getting one source of revenue a month from the person whoever pays for the account.
Yeah.
So the thing though is that that's going to tap into viewership though. That's going to tap into viewership on stuff. So how they're going to try to mitigate this, because the whole overarching goal is to get the leeches who share passwords, who are using a shared password. They want to get them to sign up.
Yeah.
And what they're going to do, Reed Hastings came out and said this, they want to implement kind of like what Hulu does, in the regard that they want to have a lower cost subscription for Netflix, but it's ad tier. Peacock does this, Hulu does this, Paramount Plus does this because I have the ad tier for them. So they want to do like ad centric, content if you want to pay a lower premium price. And I saw a great tweet today that said, what's the next streaming innovation? Cable television. Which it kind of is if you truly think about it. That's essentially what television actually is. I think it was Homer Simpson who said it at one point. Marge, we have to watch the commercials. Otherwise, it's like we're stealing TV. But that's what they're planning on doing. So it's kind of a two-prong approach. They still haven't really outlined how they're going to implement this. Like, again, I'm just going off the Costa Rica model of how they did it. I can't speak as if that's what they're going to do in America, but I expect that they're going to try to implement this in the summer if they're coming out and saying it.
I'm unfamiliar with how this works, but how would like a VPN then work if you were using your Netflix thing?
So I think exactly what it is you might, I don't know if you have to really link an account to or how it's going to be, because they've also too reportedly in Costa Rica, Chile, and Peru, they have been testing different ways to kind of curb it. So it's not the same sort of principle. It's not the same sort of message or plot or rather of how they're going to do it. They're going to lose a lot of customers, though, either.
No,
they're going to lose a ton of customers, either way, no matter how they do it.
I might be one of them as well, because it's like, I already think the fee is ridiculous. Compared to what everything else is charging and the content they put out, it's not worth it. With this going on to it, I only kept it around because so many people, I hate to say it, leech off of me, and it's just like, well...
It's true.
I will keep it around for when Stranger Things comes out, or when a few other, another Scorsese Netflix movie, whatever it may be. I'll keep it around for that. But now it's just like, no, I think now it's time to put the nail in the coffin.
Here's one thing, too. Here's one thing I just read, too. In Costa Rica, how they do it, too, they charge on profiles.
Ah.
That's going to be how they do it, they're going to charge on profiles. But, like, that's a bitch, too, because it's like, okay, like we're single guys, you know what I mean? We're movie nerds and stuff. We hoard these streaming services and whatnot. We want to watch everything we can. We're a special breed. What about a child of like divorced parents?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Or something like that. There's, Netflix has 200 million subscribers. So that's 200 million people with different circumstances and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know what, like a college student, like you alluded to earlier, and the mom pays for Netflix or the dad pays for Netflix. I don't know. There's a million other like very innocent password sharing too. It's not like it's not right in the grand scheme of things, but at the same time, it's also not always like connected to like a Ponzi scheme sort of situation. Like it's a very low level crime if there ever was one, So I'm curious to really see what's going to happen. But like, you know what? At this point, I've said before, HBO Max, I said it last week even, HBO Max is my favorite streaming service at the moment. I like Hulu. I even like Paramount Plus quite a bit. If I had to get rid of Netflix, that really isn't any love lost on me. It would suck. Specifically, I would just try to work my connections with like trying to get screeners and stuff for the stuff I do want to see. But it wouldn't be a huge crime for me to forego Netflix, because Netflix has just really been quantity over quality of the streaming service game.
I know I'm squirming here. I hate to say this. I really have to go to the bathroom.
Oh, nice. Nice. No, but that's pretty much it as far as Netflix password sharing is concerned. We'll keep tabs on this situation.
This is going to be another Mount Rushmore story of Sleepless 2022 stories. Like it's definitely going to be a thing on there. The Alec Baldwin's one of them. This is another.
Alec Baldwin, yeah, really, Alec Baldwin, Netflix password over here. We'll keep tabs on this story, though. Keep the finger on the pulse. We don't break the news. We sprain it, as I like to say. If Dom was here, he would be talking about the corporate like linchpin argument of however this works. So I'd be really excited to see that. But at any rate, don't need to drag out the show as long as it needs to go. It's just the two of us. Dom will be back next week. We're reviewing Apollo 10.5. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Or I'm correct. I'm pretty sure.
A Netflix movie.
Yes, a Netflix movie. There we go. There we go. Yeah. Shout out Reed Hastings. Apollo 10.5, which I've already seen. These two haven't, to my knowledge. So we're going to get to that movie, the new Richard Linklater rotoscope animated movie. Following week, I believe, is The Northman too.
Correct.
So we've got some cool stuff that we're reviewing. I am so stoked to hear what you guys think of Apollo 10.5. And first Richard Linklater movie in a couple of years. So we will touch on that next week. Dominic Guanzon will be back as well. Thank you so much for watching. Highlights will be posted on this YouTube channel on which you are watching this. For Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon in spirit, and myself, yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.
Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.